What do you do with a quarterback who won 4 Super Bowls before anyone else ever did, but finished with 210 interceptions? That is the Terry Bradshaw problem. The easy highlights show the blonde bomber, the rings, and the deep ball, but the full record is messier. In Super Bowl XIII, after Thomas Henderson mocked him with the famous cat line, Bradshaw answered with 318 yards, 4 touchdowns, and Super Bowl MVP. Across 4 Super Bowls, he threw for 932 yards and 9 touchdowns. Still, his regular season numbers were never spotless, and he played on a great Pittsburgh team. So how good was Terry Bradshaw really? Terry Bradshaw came out of Shreveport, Louisiana, with the kind of arm that made people talk, before his NFL body of work existed. His family pushed athletics early, but academics mattered too. And that matters because the public version of Bradshaw became easy to flatten later. The old redneck image followed him for years, but even Jimmy Johnson called that act a shtick. The football player underneath was never just the loud, country TV character people got used to seeing. Bradshaw went to Louisiana Tech from 1966 through 1969, and by the time he left, he owned virtually all of the school's passing records. That is where the case starts. Not with the rings, not with the mythology, with a big-armed quarterback from Louisiana Tech who became the first overall pick in the 1970 NFL Draft. The first NFL evidence was messy. Pittsburgh went 5-9 in 1970 and missed the playoffs. Bradshaw ran for 233 yards and a touchdown, which tells you something important right away. He was not a statue. He could hurt a defense with his legs, and that part of his game usually gets buried under the old stories about the arm, the deep ball, and the Super Bowls. But as a passer, the career was never clean from the beginning. Bradshaw's final totals show the contradiction clearly. 27,989 passing yards, 212 passing touchdowns, and 210 interceptions. That is the tension in every honest Bradshaw discussion. The winning is undeniable. The box score can be ugly. The real question is what kind of quarterback he was inside all those wins. In 1971, Pittsburgh improved to 6-8 and still missed the playoffs. Bradshaw ran for 247 yards and 5 touchdowns. Again, the legs mattered. This was not modern spread football, but he could steal yards, finish drives, and stress a defense in ways that do not always show up in passing totals. Then 1972 changed the shape of his career. Pittsburgh went 11-3 and made the playoffs. Bradshaw hit his peak rushing season with 346 yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. That matters because his early value was not only stand back and launch it. He was a powerful athlete playing quarterback in a rougher passing era, and his movement was part of the offense. That season made the debate real because the Steelers were no longer just waiting on a future. They were a playoff team. Bradshaw's arm gave them vertical threat. His legs gave defenses another problem. And the team record finally matched the idea that Pittsburgh had something building at quarterback. In 1973, the Steelers went 10-4 and made the playoffs again. Bradshaw's rushing dropped to 145 yards and 3 touchdowns, but Pittsburgh was stacking playoff seasons. That team context is important because his prime did not happen in isolation. Any fair verdict has to hold 2 things at once. Yes, he played on a powerhouse. And yes, when that powerhouse needed its quarterback to make throws in January, Bradshaw made some of the biggest throws of the decade. The first championship season came in 1974. Pittsburgh went 10-3-1 and made the playoffs. Bradshaw ran for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns, and his best rushing game came on November 25th against the New Orleans Saints. Pittsburgh won 28-7, and Bradshaw ran 9 times for 99 yards and a touchdown. For a quarterback, that is not a side note, that is a weapon. A 99-yard rushing game does not make him a modern running quarterback, but it reminds you that his physical profile was bigger than the highlight reel usually shows. He could throw it through the wind, he could absorb punishment, and he could pull the ball down and punish a defense that forgot about him. That same season ended with the first Super Bowl ring. Once the rings start coming, Bradshaw's career becomes harder to separate from the Steelers' machine around him. That is where some people underrate him. They see the defense, the names, the era, and the team's success, and they flatten the quarterback into a passenger. But passengers do not throw for 932 yards and 9 touchdowns across 4 Super Bowl appearances. Passengers do not become the first quarterback to win 3 Super Bowls, then the first to win 4. And passengers do not get remembered as one of the most powerful arms in NFL history. In 1975, Pittsburgh went 12-2 and made the playoffs again. Bradshaw ran for 210 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also earned one of his 3 Pro Bowl selections. That is a key part of the case. Bradshaw was not piling up modern passing numbers. He was not playing in a league designed to make quarterback stat lines look clean. His value showed up in a different shape: the explosive throw, the playoff moment, the physical edge, and the leadership inside a team that kept winning the games that defined reputations. By the middle of the 1970s, the Steelers were becoming the standard. The record tells the rise clearly: 11-3 in 1972, 10-4 in 1973, 10-3 and 1 in 1974, and 12-2 in 1975. Bradshaw was not alone in that climb, and pretending he would be bad history. But pretending the quarterback position was incidental is just as wrong. Pittsburgh's dynasty needed the defense, the run game, the coaching, and the toughness. It also needed a quarterback who could change a game in one throw. Then 1976 complicates the picture. The Steelers went 10-4 and made the playoffs. Bradshaw ran for 219 yards and 3 touchdowns. The team was still strong, but this season sits in the middle of the body of work as a reminder that great dynasties do not move in a perfect line. Jack Lambert later said the 1976 Steelers team was the best team he ever played on, including the 4 Super Bowl teams. That is a huge statement from someone inside that era. It creates a fair counterweight in the Bradshaw discussion. If the 1976 team was that loaded, then context has to be part of the verdict. Bradshaw was not carrying a weak roster through the league. He was the quarterback of a great team. But that does not erase his job. It defines it. His job was not to throw 45 times every week and drag bad teams uphill. His job was to take a loaded, physical team and make sure its offense had enough danger to punish opponents when the biggest games tightened. That is a different test, but it is still a quarterback test. Some passers shrink in that role because there are fewer chances to recover from mistakes. Bradshaw's career was built on the fact that his biggest chances often became his biggest memories. In 1977, Pittsburgh went 9-5 and made the playoffs. Bradshaw ran for 171 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was another playoff season, but the cleanest regular season proof was still ahead. That came in 1978. Pittsburgh went 14-2 and made the playoffs. Bradshaw was named the NFL's most valuable player by the Associated Press. He completed 207 of 368 passes for 2,915 yards and a league-leading 28 touchdown passes. He was also named All-Pro and All-AFC that year, even while throwing 20 interceptions. That stat line is the Bradshaw experience in one sentence. League-leading touchdowns, MVP, All-Pro, 14 wins for the team, and still 20 interceptions. If you compare him to a modern quarterback, the interceptions jump off the page. But if you judge him inside his era and his role, the touchdowns and the results matter just as much. Bradshaw was a downfield quarterback. He attacked. He did not play a sterile, careful brand of football. The ball was going to move, and sometimes it was going to move dangerously. That is not an excuse for the mistakes. It is the shape of the player. The best Bradshaw was not a precision machine. He was a big game thrower with a huge arm, a tough body, and enough confidence to keep firing even when the stat line was not pretty. His 1978 season is the strongest regular season evidence that he was more than a dynasty caretaker. He led the league in touchdown passes and won MVP during a 14-2 season. Then Super Bowl XIII turned the case into a memory. Before the game, Cowboys linebacker Thomas Hollywood Henderson mocked him with the famous line that Bradshaw could not spell cat if you spotted him, the C and the A. Bradshaw answered it in the cleanest way possible. He completed 17 of 30 passes for a then-record 318 yards and 4 touchdowns in a 35-31 win. He won Super Bowl MVP. That game matters because it cuts through the noise. There are moments when a quarterback's reputation gets decided not by a spreadsheet, but by whether he can stand in the middle of the biggest stage and deliver explosives. Against Dallas, in a Super Bowl rematch, after getting publicly ridiculed, Bradshaw produced one of the signature quarterback performances of his era. That is not a passenger performance. That is the part of Bradshaw's career that survives every fair criticism. The interceptions are real. The team strength is real. The defensive context is real. But when the stage was biggest, Bradshaw's arm did not disappear. In 4 Super Bowl appearances, he threw for 932 yards and 9 touchdowns. 3 of his 7 career 300-yard passing games came in the postseason, and 2 came in Super Bowls. That tells you where his passing peak showed up. Not every Sunday, not in the cleanest career efficiency profile, but in the games that made the Steelers, the Steelers. In 1979, Pittsburgh went 12-4 and made the playoffs. Bradshaw's rushing role was smaller by then, with 83 yards and no touchdowns, but the championship machine still had one more run. He won his 4th Super Bowl ring, becoming the first quarterback to win 4 Super Bowls. That fact can become so familiar it loses force. Before Bradshaw, no quarterback had reached that number. He was the first to 3, then the first to 4. That does not automatically make him the best quarterback ever, but it gives his body of work a historical weight that cannot be brushed aside. He was the quarterback of the decade's defining team, and he closed the 1970s with a ring count nobody at his position had reached before. By the end of that run, the case for Bradshaw was simple but powerful. 4 rings in 6 years, 8 AFC Central championships in his career, 3 Pro Bowls, 1 first-team All-Pro, an MVP season, a Hall of Fame induction in 1989, his first year of eligibility, a reputation as a tough competitor with one of the strongest arms the league had seen. But the counter-argument never fully goes away. His career passer rating was 70.9. He threw 210 interceptions against 212 passing touchdowns. The regular season numbers are not as clean as some other Hall of Fame quarterbacks. If you judge greatness only by week-to-week statistical dominance, Bradshaw is not going to look like the smoothest answer. That is why his case depends on value in context. He played quarterback in an era where the position was different, where the passing game was more physical, and where his job was to give a championship roster explosive offense when it mattered. His mistakes were part of the package. So were the deep shots. So were the rushing yards. So was the willingness to attack windows that safer quarterbacks might not try. The all-around skill is underrated too. Bradshaw finished with 2,257 rushing yards and 32 rushing touchdowns. That is not a trivia stat. It changes how you understand him. The image most people carry is the blonde quarterback throwing deep in a Steelers uniform. But early Bradshaw could create with his legs. In 1972, he ran for 346 yards and 7 touchdowns. In 1974, he ripped off that 99-yard rushing game against New Orleans. Across his career, he added a real ground threat to a passing profile built around power. That combination made him physically difficult in a way the raw passing line does not fully capture. He was not just a thrower. He was a big, rugged quarterback who could move, run, and take over games with his arm when Pittsburgh needed it. After the 4th ring, the team record shows the dynasty winding down. Pittsburgh went 9-7 in 1980 and missed the playoffs. Bradshaw ran for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. In 1981, the Steelers went 8-8 and missed the playoffs again, while he ran for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the 1982 strike-shortened season, Pittsburgh went 6-3 and made the playoffs, though his rushing production had dropped to 10 yards. In 1983, the team went 10-6 and made the playoffs, but Bradshaw's rushing line was 1 carry for 3 yards. That late stretch matters because the body of work did not keep climbing forever. Bradshaw's historical case is concentrated around the 1970s peak. He was not a quarterback who spent 20 years stacking records. He played 14 NFL seasons, all with Pittsburgh, and his legacy is built around a devastating championship window. That can be a limitation if you value longevity above everything. But if you value peak impact in the games that define an era, Bradshaw's case is stronger than the raw career stat sheet suggests. His second act adds some irony to the way people remember him. The public came to know him as the funny, loud, self-deprecating broadcaster, the guy with the country albums, TV roles, and the old redneck reputation. He also dealt publicly with clinical depression, which gives the post-career image more depth than the shtick alone. But none of that should blur the football player. If anything, it explains why he can be easy to underrate. The TV version is so familiar that the quarterback can start to feel like a character from old highlights. He was more than that. He was flawed. He threw too many interceptions to be treated like a clean statistical god. He played with a team context that has to be acknowledged every time the rings come up. He was not asked to be the entire franchise by himself, and there is no need to pretend otherwise. But he was also the quarterback who made the Steelers' dynasty explosive. He had one of the most powerful arms in NFL history. He won MVP in 1978 with 2,915 yards and a league-leading 28 touchdown passes. He answered the biggest insult of his career with 318 yards, 4 touchdowns, a Super Bowl record at the time, and a Super Bowl MVP. He finished 4 Super Bowl appearances with 932 passing yards and 9 touchdowns. He added 2,257 rushing yards and 32 rushing touchdowns over his career, and he left with 4 rings before any quarterback had ever reached that number. So the clean verdict is this: Terry Bradshaw was not the most statistically efficient great quarterback, and he was not great in the same way modern fans usually measure quarterback greatness. But he was absolutely great. He was a high-variance, big-armed, physically tough championship quarterback whose best football showed up when the Steelers' dynasty needed throws that ordinary quarterbacks could not make. The team helped make him. He helped make the team historic. If you want more player verdicts built this carefully, the membership is below, and it helps decide future deep dives. And if you want your name in a future in-card member shoutout, the membership is open below.